great speaker with us today, Martsolf. And Carol is actually an alumni of this department in 1992. And I understand that her daughter is also going to the civil engineering program. So wonderful. Thank you for endorsing Carol. And she has a PE, professional license in civil engineering. She's a vice president and manager of training at Urban Engineers, which is a major civil engineering company. Has more than 20 years of engineering and management experience. She has dedicated her career to serving communities, professionals, and the engineering industry through mentoring and professional development. She's also the vice president of Philadelphia Engineering Foundation, which awards scholarships to needy students. Was president of Philadelphia chapter for both Women's Transportation Seminar and American Society of Civil Engineers. And he has proudly served as scholarship chair of the Engineers Week Council for more than a decade. So it's really a great honor and pleasure to welcome her here today. And she's going to talk about the advice that she would give to my 20-year-old. So we're really looking forward to her talk.
Thank you. Thank you. I was going to try this without a microphone. Can people in the back hear me? You can hear me? Okay. And is the recording okay? Okay. Well, first of all, it's really nice to be back here. I've been back here a few times since I graduated. I graduated about 20 years ago, and I can't believe there's a whole new building being built right next to this. And gosh, the labs that you have here are incredible. And it's just amazing the changes that have taken place. And so I was in your position about 20 years ago, and I remember being in this room for things too. And for some reason, if I do start to get a little quiet and you can't hear me, just kind of like let me know, please. So anyway, when I was thinking about what kind of presentation to do here, I had just read online in my Facebook feed, they were like interviewing like a 96-year-old woman, and she had all this advice about like how to get to 96 years old and all of her advice and what she ate, what are her nutritional secrets. And I thought, maybe that would be a good topic for this. Not necessarily nutrition, but you know, what things have I learned in my career that I can impart to you? And what things would I have wanted to know when I was your age? So anyway, a blast from the past. This is me when I graduated in 1992. And so I'm imagining myself just being in the audience with you, and what would I want to know that I've learned along the way? And first I'll just give you a little bit of background about myself. My senior design project was about a highway project and alternatives analysis. So that kind of paved the way for me about what kinds of things I would do in my career. So I liked roadway design. I liked highways, not necessarily building all new highways, but improving existing highways. And so when I graduated, it wasn't really a good year for getting a job, and I had several interviews. But the big thing that did it for me was I went to an ASCE meeting. Now, how many of you know what ASCE is? Yeah, good, a decent number. And you have a student chapter here? Do you have a student? Okay, good. Well, definitely get involved in that, because that's actually how I got my first job. And interestingly enough, when I graduated, I sent letters to, now back then, like, there was no email, so I mailed letters to like all of the local civil engineering companies. And you know, I got a letter back from one of them called Parsons Brinkerhoff. It's like, oh, we're not hiring now. Thank you, but we don't need any entry-level engineers. But I met someone at an ASCE meeting from Parsons Brinkerhoff, and he hired me based off of meeting me and getting to know me. So that's one of the lessons that I'll present to you here. But actually what I did also was I contacted the president, and he actually had someone introduce, like, he actually walked me around to people so I could actually meet people, because it's kind of hard when you graduate and you're kind of scared to meet new people. And so anyway, if you ever feel like that, you can always ask me, like if you're ready to graduate and you kind of need some help being introduced to people. Oh, I wouldn't mind helping you out. So anyway, I got hired at Parsons Brinckerhoff as an entry-level engineer, and I stayed there for 10 years. And at that time, I was an engineer in training, and I was technically a highway design engineer. And these are the kinds of things that I did. I did highway design, drainage design. I designed where to put the inlets along roads. I developed maintenance protection of traffic plans. That's basically when you have a road that's closed off, basically how does traffic get to where it needs to go, even with the roadway project. And erosion and sedimentation control plans, basically when you have a lot of construction, there's a lot of debris, a lot of dirt. How do you control it so you don't, muddy the waters that are nearby and the rivers nearby? So after 10 years, I went to Urban Engineers. And why I did that was I was feeling stagnant in my job at Parsons Brinckerhoff, and it grew from a company of several thousand to like 10,000, and I just felt like a number, and I didn't like feeling like just a number. I liked it when people knew my name, knew what I did. So it was time for me to leave, and I just didn't feel like I was growing anymore. So I used my contacts in the American Society of Civil Engineers, and I made it known just to a couple of people. I said, I'm not really happy at Parsons Brinckerhoff anymore. If you know of any openings anywhere, I'm really interested in moving on. So someone at Urban was interested in hiring me. So I got hired there. And I liked Urban Engineers. I kind of knew people at the company. And I started out as an administrative coordinator, but then I got my PE while I was at Urban Engineers, and I became project manager, and then I became manager of professional career development, and then manager of training, and then I became a vice president. So you can see in terms of my career track, being at Urban Engineers really escalated my promotions, actually. And while I was at Urban Engineers, I also was president of the Philly chapter of ASCE, president of Women's Transportation Seminar, and actually the vice presidency of the Engineering Foundation is my current position. Those other ones are past positions. So anyway, I just wanted to show you some pictures. This was the last project I managed as a civil engineer. This was, I guess it was completed around like 2010. It was a trail project, and I had to coordinate all of the disciplines, the architects, the electrical engineers, the mechanical engineers, the civil engineers. So just to tell you briefly, I had a career track as an engineer, and then a project manager, and then there was a certain point in my career where there was an opening to run the training for my company. And I think it suited my skills because not only was I really strong technically, but I really enjoy seeing people learn and grow. And that was something that I really couldn't fulfill as just an engineer and a project manager. So that's why I became manager of training. You may be wondering how an engineer becomes manager of training. Well, that's how it happened. So now, I just want to tell you some things that I feel like I would have wanted to know when I was your age. Basically now, just learn all you can and enjoy school, because work is so different than being in college. I mean, when you work, you have to figure out a lot of things for yourself. Like you're not told what to do. It's not like you're given an assignment and then you complete it and you hand it in. You have to figure a lot of things out for yourself. So right now, you just enjoy, I would say, the comfort of just having instructors teach you, soak in everything you can, enjoy learning, because once you do have a job, there's a lot more figuring out that you have to do. So it's basically from 20 to 1 here. Now, realize too that work is not an extension of school, and that was one of the biggest learning curves for me. Basically, when you're here in school, you pay to get taught. It's like you're the one who gets a service. But when you work, they're paying you. And just make sure you work smart and hard and be respectful, learn and seek opportunities, and I definitely encourage internships. Anytime you can have an internship, when we get resumes for hiring, it's always, let's see what internships this student had and what experience did they get like on the job, because your competition is going to be doing that. So make sure you get that here, and over the summer, try to get as much experience as you can in internships. So just to give you a story, so basically, like I said, when you're in school, you're the one who pays, and that when you have a job, it's like you're getting paid. Like, I can't believe I did this. Like with my supervisor, I kind of said, "Oh, is it okay if I leave at 4:30 every day?" Well, wrong question to ask. Well, no, you shouldn't leave at 4:30. Like, why do you want to leave at 4:30? Like, I kind of thought of it as like, well, I wanted more of a flexible schedule, and it's like you're there to do a job. It's not like you can change your classes around, and it's like you're in control. So, so that was one thing that I did that I don't think I should have done. And another thing is that when you're in school, you choose your classes and you're kind of spoon-fed information. But when you're employed, your interest is not the center of what's happening when you're employed. Like when you're here and you're paying and you're a student, you're going to get the benefit. So for example, about 3 years into my career, my supervisor started giving me proposal writing, which is like writing about, we use proposals to get work. And my supervisor kept giving it to me, and I happened to be like very good at it because I knew how to write well. And he kept giving me that kind of work. And then after about a year or two, I thought to myself, well, here I am, I need experience to get my PE. Why is all of the writing helping me? It really wasn't at that part of my career. But I accepted that what they were giving me was what was best for me, and that was wrong. So just remember, it's not like in school where your teachers have your best interest in mind and they want to teach you. Think for yourself and think, is this assignment I'm being given good for my career? I want to be a PE, which means I need at least like 4 years of experience, 5 years of experience to take the PE exam. If it's not good experience for me, you have to speak up and say, I don't want to do this proposal writing anymore, and I didn't do that. It was good for my career for a little bit, but not in the long term. Take initiative, be proactive. I mean, this I do even now. Don't wait for opportunities, seek them out. You own your career. Nobody owns it but you. Take opportunities when they appear and help others too. I have another story about a mistake that I made. It may have been 2 years after I got hired. Back then, there was no CAD. Everything was done by hand. I would draw a highway alignment with like little like curves, and we'd use tracing paper. Unheard of now. But that's how it was back then. And there was an opportunity to learn CAD. It was like this new thing, and I had other entry-level peers with me, and they all took it, and I thought, I don't need to know CAD. I'm doing everything by hand. I don't need to know CAD. Well, that was also a mistake, because everything's done in CAD now. Like back then, nothing was done in CAD, and now everything is done in CAD. So 5 or 7 years in, I was behind because I didn't take the CAD training. I just assumed that I didn't need it. So just learn, take opportunities when they appear, and really don't wait. Like you can't wait for opportunities because you own your career. Learn financial management, not just because eventually you'll be a project manager on a project and you have to know how to track funding and how much money you have left and how much staff you can put on a project, but just for your own edification. Definitely know financial management. That's another mistake that I would have liked to have done differently. Once you get employed, start contributing to your 401k. I know you want to save for a house, you want to save for a car, you have nothing. Just immediately throw money into your 401k. And then in no time, like, you'll realize that you can retire at a decent age and not have to work forever. and know how to manage the money that you earn. Seek out mentors. I've been so fortunate to have so many mentors who've helped me in my career. Back when I was at Parsons Brinckerhoff and I wanted to change my job, I went to my mentors and they really helped me. And that's something that I want to do now and that I've been doing, is that I want to be a mentor too to other people. A great way to seek out mentors is go to professional society meetings, go to ASCE meetings, go to Society of Women Engineers meetings, go to American Society of Highway Engineers meetings. Whatever professional society is within your discipline, go and meet people and shake people's hands and get to know them. And most likely one of them will want to be your mentor. And be a mentor yourself. Don't just take advice, but also be a mentor to other people. Okay, so I repeated this many times because it's very important. So network and network and network and network, because it's very important. When you start out, everyone's kind of like on the same level, but you notice that eventually it really is important who you know. It's not just what you know. And right now it's all about what you know, but eventually it does become about who you know. Like when you have to win work for your company, it becomes very challenging. You really have to go to professional society meetings, meet people, give people your business card. Networking has been like one of the most significant things in my career that I really encourage you to do. Get involved and give back. Giving back is something that's very important to me. And I've already mentioned some of these professional organizations. Actually, just to say a little bit more about this, is that you learn a whole slew of new skills when you get involved. Like you have to, eventually, like if you get involved in a board, you have to know how to run board meetings and talk to people, make presentations. You may become treasurer of a group. You'll learn how to manage money. So document. As a young engineer, as a professional engineer, a manager, and as a vice president, documentation is very important. So when you get your first job and you have your annual review where they analyze how well you've done or if you need improvement, document all the good things that you've done. If you have an email from a client that said, great job, you've done a great job on this, save it, and when you have your annual review, show it to your manager, and it'll be evidence so that you can get higher pay, get a promotion. Document. And at each level, it means different things. I'll explain that here. The one project that I had, that I was project manager of that went into construction, it's very high stress, time is money, and you have to document very carefully what is done when, because if there's an issue with, for example, on my project, we had certain trusses designed for one of the buildings, and there was a change made, and I documented it, but then the trusses were designed according to the old design and not the new one. So because I had it documented, my company didn't have to pay extra money. The contractor did, because it was the contractor's mistake. It wasn't our mistake. So just make sure you document. And also, as a manager or vice president, if you have staff, it's very important to document your staff. Document their performance. Actually, that's very important. And so at each level, documentation is very important. This was also a mistake that I made. Take care of yourself and your health. And you may not be thinking about your health very much now, but believe me, it catches up to you. I would work really hard and skip a lot of meals. I wouldn't sleep very well. Although I did exercise, I've run several marathons, but for the most part, I really didn't pay too much attention to my nutrition, and your older self will thank you. So imagine your 40-year-old self. They're telling you now, take care of your health. Make sure you eat well and sleep and exercise. And not only that, if you're worried about your health, you can't perform on your job. You can't excel at your job if you're worried about your health. So definitely do these things. Develop your leadership skills. Join boards like your student chapters. Join the board. Become the treasurer, the secretary, or organize meetings. Like definitely get involved. And also manage eventually when you get to the stage, manage projects and staff, and that also develops your leadership skills. Now, I have this under this topic because this is something that has been repeated to me throughout my career. It's a scope, schedule, and budget. So when you have a project, you want to make sure that you understand what the project is, which is the scope. You want to know how long you have to either complete the whole project or a part of it, which is the schedule, and how much money you have to spend. I think regardless of what engineering you're in, I was in civil engineering, but if you in any way have control over some kind of project, each of these things will be very important. And communication, I have this under leadership because I remember I was so nervous for my senior design project presentation. I wasn't used to communicating, and it was a skill that you have to refine over time, because that's a sign of a true leader, that they can communicate well. So focus on that too. Have passion and enthusiasm in what you do. And then there's a quote over here, by Emerson, "Nothing great was ever achieved without enthusiasm." And I guess this goes along with just enjoying what you do. Make sure that you're on a path that you just really enjoy and that you really feel like that's your path and you just have passion for it. And not only that, senior leaders really do tell which ones are just getting by because they have a job and they're just doing their job, and those who really, really put in the extra effort and have passion for what they do and enthusiasm for what they do. So have passion and enthusiasm in what you do. And don't give up. Failure, mistakes, and challenges are a part of the success path. I can't emphasize this enough. I mean, some of the most challenging tasks that I've had have been the best learning experiences for me, and actually catapulted me to a higher level, and have been the result of, I've actually been promoted from going through some things that have been really difficult professionally. And another thing is when you're in a certain position in your career and you make a change or you want a change, that is very uncomfortable. For example, before I became a vice president, I made it known. And actually, I think that's in one of the advices coming up. I made it known that I wanted to be a vice president, and I wanted to know, how can I be a vice president of this firm? And before I became vice president, I was very uncomfortable and very uneasy because I wanted to be a vice president. I didn't know what to do, but I wanted to be one, and I wanted to increase my level of contribution so I could be one. Not just for the title, but I wanted to make sure I always want to go to the next level. I'm not really ever happy just being where I am. I want to go to the next level. So just realize that there's going to be failure, you're going to make mistakes, but if you recognize that it's a part of the path, then you don't sweat it too much. So don't give up. You'll have these things happen, but don't give up. And this kind of goes along with the previous one. Definitely challenges will happen. It's not like it's going to be smooth sailing the whole time. And just like this character is doing in the picture, just jump over the challenge and move on. Don't let it faze you. Right now in my current position, since I run the training for the company, we have live training events. And even though I cross all my T's and dot all my I's, things still happen. The microphone, something will happen with the microphone that has nothing to do with anything that I've done. It may have been maybe the IT department had someone use it the day before, and even though I've tested it, something happens. Well, it doesn't faze me anymore because I know things are going to happen. I prepare, but if things happen, they do. You just have to deal with it and move on. Handle it and move on. Prepare and be thorough, but see the big picture. And I think we as engineers, like we're so detail oriented and we can be focused in on the details, but definitely see the big picture too. And if you want to get into like project management, you have to see the big picture. And that was also a challenge for me. Like when I was project manager on that Hickory Run project, where's the trails and the buildings, I had to be careful not to be so focused in on the details and see the big picture. Like if there was a utility that the electrical engineers were dealing with, I needed to make sure that the civil plans addressed it too. And I really needed to have a big picture view. So be prepared, be thorough, but also consider the big picture. And be happy, like really enjoy what you do. You have to work like your whole life, so most of us will. So just make sure you're happy with what you do. Like really just explore whether or not you're on the path that you want to be on and if you're happy. Do what you enjoy and think about what's your vision and what's your purpose. Is what you're doing in line with what you think your purpose is? And what's your vision for your life? Is what you're doing in line with those things? Manage stress. This is a big one. As you go along in your career, or even now, you have school stress. I mean, you have all these classes and you have to maintain a certain grade point average. You have stress now. But definitely it becomes a greater issue when you have to earn money to support your family, and just other stresses come up. And work hard. Work hard. This is, I think one of the best pieces of advice I can give to you is work hard, because you do get out of it what you put into it. And have balance. Don't be just a workaholic. You really, as a person, you have interest. You need to develop all of you, not just the work you. So try to have balance. Actually, this is a quote, and I'm not sure who said it, and I would attribute that quote to whoever said it, which I don't remember who said it, but your greatest resource is resourcefulness. And that actually means a lot to me, because it means no matter what problem comes your way, if you're resourceful, you can figure it out. Don't be afraid of whatever challenge will come to you. You can handle it. And I got to number 1, and I had like several other things I wanted to say. So I kind of lumped one with like several pieces of advice here. Be kind, help others, and try to stay positive. Like throughout my career, I mean, so many things have been thrown at me, and you just have to stay positive. And you have obstacles. You have obstacles with people. You have to work with all kinds of different people when you're on the job. You have project teams. You may have someone on your team who's like not pulling their weight, and you have to like figure out how to get them to pull their own weight. You have people competing with you for positions, and you have to deal with that. But stay positive, because in the end, it's all good. So stay positive. And I have my email address there, but if you have any questions now, I'd be happy to answer them. And thanks for listening. I saw your hand first.
You mentioned about team members pulling their own weight. Do you have an anecdote about how you managed to do that while being fine?
Yeah, let me think. Yeah, I do. In this particular instance, and it's actually, there are different scenarios for that. If you're working in a team and it's someone who is at your level, I would recommend going to the project manager of that team and telling them, you know, gosh, we had this 100% submission that we were getting out, and I worked over the weekend, but I know so-and-so who is responsible for whatever really didn't put anything into it, and I'm concerned about that. And the project manager wants to know, believe me. Like, the project manager doesn't want like anything to go south and get messed up. So it'll actually be like doing a favor for that project manager. And And if it's someone who is, if you're in a supervisory position to that person who's not pulling his or her own weight, then you have more clout where you can like meet with them and say, and that goes into the documentation. You can't just say, hey, you know what, you weren't pulling your own weight. What you have to say is, for our submission that was sent out on September 1st, you had responsibility for making sure that utilities had no conflicts. And we sent it out, and the client determined that there were conflicts. And I know, like, the hours that you worked up to that submission, and you haven't been pulling your own weight. So a recommendation will be, you know, for our next submission, I want to make sure you're here for the entire day, and I want to double check your utility coordination before the submission goes out. And that way, you don't just say, hey, you haven't been pulling your weight. Like, if you're a supervisor, it goes back to documentation. You have a meeting with them, and you're very specific about what they did not do and what they have to do to improve. So it kind of depends if you're a peer or on different levels. Now, if you're below the level of the person that's not performing, I would still say go to the project manager of whatever project that was and like express it to that person. So,
Thank you.
yeah, thank you. Did you have a question?
Yeah, as a young engineer, you unavoidably make mistakes, whether it's a small mistake or just a lack of understanding.
Yes.
What would you say is a healthy attitude towards that personally, and then in the sense of people you're obligated to?
Okay. Well, first of all, like just for yourself, I would just remember that mistakes are a part of the learning experience, and actually, whatever project manager you're working for, they know that too. But if you feel like you're working on something and you're not doing it right, definitely communicate that to your project manager. Like when I had communication on the screen, that's very, very important. Like definitely communicate to the person who's ultimately responsible. Like, you don't understand this now, but when you become a professional engineer and you have staff working for you on projects, you are the one who's stamping the plans. So ultimately, the project manager is responsible for everything. Your mistakes, everybody's mistakes, if the project manager doesn't catch it. So in being openly communicative to your project manager, you can just let him or her know, hey, I'm working on this and I don't think I'm doing it quite right. Can you either like show me how to do it better or show me what I'm not doing correctly? And actually, you'll learn this too. It's like when you do design calculations, there's a line for, you know, calculations performed by so-and-so, and then checked by so-and-so. We never submit anything that isn't checked. Like, you have to have initials in both of those. And if you see a set of design plans, it's prepared by so-and-so, checked by so-and-so. Like, your work is always checked. So if you do make mistakes and someone's reviewing it and they find it, good. Actually, be relieved that it was caught, because if it's not caught, that's kind of like when people get into trouble. And then even after someone checks your work, it may be reviewed by a project manager before it gets submitted. So as a young engineer, like, make mistakes. It's okay. Like, try to do your best, but making mistakes is okay. Just make sure people are checking your work, and just make sure you communicate that if you feel like you're working on something and it's not right. Like, definitely communicate it, because the project manager wants you to do a good job, and don't try to hide a mistake. Just make sure you're just very open about it, and it's okay. I mean, anyone that you're working for knows that.
Thank you.
Yeah, sure. Yes.
Like, as a project manager with all the responsibility, how do you avoid like micromanaging?
Well, for example, that project at Hickory Run State Park, I had to rely on, I guess you should say, the subject matter experts of the other disciplines. For example, like I don't know, I'm not an architect, I'm not an electrical engineer, I'm a civil engineer. And you just have to put a certain degree of trust in the department head above that person, like so if the electrical designer does certain work, and just like on that construction plan, design by, check by, you have to have a certain degree of trust in that higher level professional who's checking the work. So I could have micromanaged and been like, explain this to me. I want to make sure I know this is working right. You need to have a certain degree of confidence and trust in the other professionals that you're working with. So I would say that, just making sure that when you're working with other people at your level, when you do become a project manager, just have a certain degree of trust that they got to that position because they were good at what they do, and you can like trust it. So I guess that's what I would say, if that helps answer your question. Yes.
Can you elaborate more on like why you got LEED certified and is that
Yeah.
recommendation?
Yes, I became LEED certified because environmental engineering is becoming a really great field right now. I think the Earth needs a lot of help, and so that was why I became a LEED AP. I do recommend it. How many of you are environmental engineers, or do you have, or you're an undergrad with it? Okay, cool, good. So I recommend any credential that you can get within that is good to have. I think like you can have a lot of experience in a certain discipline, but when you have the credential with your name, it means something. And I personally haven't worked on a LEED project. I got my certification before they changed all the rules. So right now I would actually have to work on a LEED project to become accredited. Like right now you can be, I think it's called a green professional. The word green is in it for like the first level, and then you can get up to a second level. But back when I got accredited, it was just LEED AP and nothing else. Or it's called a green associate or something like that. So I recommend any kind of accreditation that you can get for whatever your discipline is. I recommend that you get it. So if you're into environmental engineering, I do recommend you get the accreditations for it. Any other questions? Yes?
You get a job on the resume, what's the expected GPA?
That's a very good question. I have to say, when I actually do have some experience in, I helped the HR department for a little while at Urban Engineers, and really when department heads look at resumes, they don't really, I mean, if you're applying for scholarships, they look at your GPA, but employers really don't look at your GPA very much. They want to see your experience in like internships. If you have a good GPA, put it on your resume. But if your GPA isn't the greatest, just leave it off. And I think it'll be all right. You should try to get good grades. But we all know, we meaning experienced engineers, know that you don't learn everything that you need in college in order to be a good employee. We know that you know enough that you're teachable. We can teach you how to actually, I mean, what you learn is very important, but you'll learn that there are so many other things to learn, really, like when you get your first job. So I would say leave the GPA off your resume, but if it's good, if it's like 3 or 3 point whatever, or 4 or whatever, I would put it on there. But employers really aren't looking for that. They're looking for what internships have you had and what did you learn on your internships, because they want to just hire you and start giving you work. And so the more experience you have, the better. And leadership positions, that's what they're looking for too. If you're president of the SWE here, put that on your resume. They look for leadership and they look for internship experience. Those are like the 2 greatest things that they look for. So I would say GPA is not very important for the resume, unless you're applying for scholarships, because they do look for that.
Speaking of internships, have many students want to be interested in engineering right now here. How do they start with it? For example, a company like Urban Engineers, if they want to apply for internships, so where do they start with?
Okay, well, just like how I got my first job, I suggest you network, because the HR department gets tons of resumes, department heads get tons of resumes, and I've noticed with the hiring of interns, it's usually, oh, I got to know so-and-so at ASCE, or I got to know so-and-so at the Engineers Club. That puts your step forward than everyone else who is just a piece of paper to the department head. So I would recommend that you network and get to know people. And for example, you know, if you're at a student chapter event and you do meet someone from Urban Engineers, give them your resume and say, I'm interested in an internship. But like, do that right now, but also I recommend you develop relationships with the people that you meet. Like, make sure that they know you. And when I say relationships, I mean, like, make sure you maintain a professional relationship with them. So it's not just, oh, meeting them once and then like not contacting them again. Meet them, send them a follow-up email. If you read something about them, say, hey, I read about you and whatever. Maintain the relationship. So I would recommend networking, 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 just like that slide showed, and meet people at the companies and also at the career fairs that you have here. That's another way you can meet someone. So if you're interested in a certain company, make sure that they get your resume. But like, I've been here to the career fairs, like we get like tons of resumes. And what the differing factor is whether or not, like for example, if like you actually know someone and you're more than just like a piece of paper, and you all are more than a piece of paper, but just definitely get to know people. So if you're interested in interning, for example, Urban Engineers, and you know me, well, I could be an in for you. And of course, I want to help out all the Temple students. But get to know people. That's, I guess, the quick answer to that. Get to know people and then have them know you and have them know that you're more than a name on a piece of paper. Oh, okay.
What kind of types of leadership would you say really look good?
Any kind of board position in your student chapter is very impressive. If you're the one who like organizes events, event coordinator for the student chapter of the American Society of Civil Engineers, student chapter of Temple, or any kind of active involvement in a student chapter is ranked very highly to people who review resumes. But also if you have leadership in like, you know, the swim club or Girl Scouts or Boy Scouts, or actually any kind of leadership actually is beneficial, but particularly professional societies, because that's like the business that you're going in. So I would say definitely put your leadership positions on your resume. So take a board position or something. Any other questions? Yeah.
Maybe talk about the importance of PE licensure and when you took the FE, what it's called, FE now.
Yes, okay. Well, first of all of you definitely take the FE either in your senior year or immediately thereafter, because you're going to forget everything. Like, definitely do that. Like, after the first 2 years, like I forgot a lot of what was in the FE, but it's so fresh in your mind when you're a senior. And that's when I took it. I was a senior and I passed it. And I know people now who are well, they're not practicing engineers because they don't have their license, but they have a lot of experience. And they have to go back and take the FE, and they have to study chemistry and electrical circuits, and it's like all bizarre to them because they don't remember any of it. It's really difficult. So just make sure that you get your FE as soon as you can, senior year, immediately thereafter. And being a professional engineer is very, very important. You cannot have responsible charge, quote unquote, responsible charge of a project. It's so important there's music playing. It's so important. And because and that legally protects you. If you design something, like you cannot stamp any plans unless you are a professional engineer within civil engineering. And even like in our other departments, the electrical engineers, You cannot be the responsible person in charge of any project if you are not licensed. So you can forget about being a project manager. Like, you won't be a project, well, maybe you could, but you ultimately would not be the one who would have responsible charge on that project. As project manager, you are the one ultimately responsible. But if you're not licensed, like if there's a lawsuit that comes up with the project or anything, like, you have to be licensed, or that, like, your company won't even let you have any kind of responsible charge over anything if you're not a PE. I mean, you definitely have to get licensed. That's very important. It shows you know what you're doing and you can be responsible, be the responsible person. Any other questions?
So any job opportunities for graduate students, PhD students, and urban engineers regarding, because I know it's less than undergraduate, and what positions they can get, R&D or any other section?
Well, urban engineers doesn't do like any research and development or anything. Like, how we get our work is a client will advertise that we need to do like preliminary engineering and final design for a stretch of a roadway or something, or for a bridge, or for a transit agency, like a transit station or something. So I would say like maybe 1 or 2 people at Urban Engineers have PhDs. Like, it's very rare. Most of the people employed at Urban, like the engineers, the professionals, they certainly have a bachelor's, and a lot of them have masters. But we have very few PhDs. So the kind of people that we hire, we would hire someone who's a PhD, but they want to see more of your internships and what experience you have. And so, at least at Urban, we don't do any research. Like, it's a consulting firm, so no research and development. So if you are competing against someone who only has a bachelor's, you're pretty much on the same level. We don't consider the PhD to be of a lot of benefit in that kind of business. But I'm sure there are like lots of other places where it would be like a super benefit to be a PhD. I mean, and I think actually that gives you a really good position if you want to like teach here at a university, because it's good to have the PhD and then have really good work experience. So it's not like you only know the theory, but you know in practice how it all turns out. So I do recommend that like you work for like some kind of consulting firm or something for a little bit, just to like get a flavor and become a PE. That's like one of the most awesome combinations, to be a PhD and a PE. And then that can take you like anywhere. Like, that's like a great combination.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. And if you have any other questions along the way, you can email me and I'm happy to help answer them.